Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Kathy Falzer, Vice President of Action and Programs of the Charlottesville Chapter of the National Organization for Women. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for the impact of COVID on women and families. This has been a harrowing year as the world has confronted an infectious disease pandemic. The last incidence of such an event in this country dates back to the Spanish flu in 1918, and unfortunately, we were exceptionally poorly prepared to deal with it even in 2020, despite the many warnings from infectious disease specialists. This year has highlighted the inequities due to race, ethnicities, income, and of course, gender, which is why, with Mother's Day being celebrated in a few days, we thought it timely to address the disproportionate challenges women and mothers have faced this year. Our panel is especially well equipped to highlight these challenges. We welcome Joey Conover, President of Clark School PTO, Janette Martin, President of Albemarle Charlottesville NAACP, Fanny Smedley, Board President of Sin Barreras, Victoria McCullough, Client Services Operator of Sin Barreras, and Jessica Bates, Director of Training and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion of Region 10 Community Services Board. Thank you all for being here. But before we start our discussion, we have a few announcements. First, please be aware that tonight's meeting is being recorded and will be posted afterwards on Charlottesville Now's YouTube channel. You can find the link for that in the chat. Please subscribe to our channel and help our group grow. On May 19th at 7 p.m., you are invited to a Zoom, The Criminalization of Black and Brown Girls, Adversity, Abuse, and the School to Prison Pipeline, co-presented by the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, NOVA, and Virginia Now. It features, among others, Sharice Hopkins, Senior Counsel of Rights for Girls, Valerie Slater, Executive Director of Rise for Youth, and our own Juan Diego Wade of the Charlottesville City School Board. You must register in advance at the link in the chat. You want to be sure to save this chat because we're putting a lot of links in there to the things I'm mentioning. A word about important upcoming elections in Virginia with races for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and all 100 seats in the Virginia House of Delegates. Republicans will select their candidates by convention on May 8th. Early voting is already underway at your city or county registrar's office for the Democratic primary on June 8th. The final date to register is May 17th, and the final day to apply for a mailed absentee ballot is May 28th. There are a record-setting number of women running this year, and we urge you to support them. You can support all the now endorsed feminist candidates running for state office by donating to the Virginia Now PAC at the link in the chat. And don't forget to vote. You can get all your voting questions answered, registration, absentee ballot, etc., in one place at the Virginia Department of Elections, and that link is also in the chat. Charlottesville Now's annual feminist book drive to benefit the Jefferson Madison Regional Library is underway and will continue through Women's Equality Day, August 26. This annual book drive started in 2013. We're not quite that old, and has grown each year as our members and supporters join in the effort to lift the voices and accomplishments of women and girls. The link to the wish list is in the chat tonight. There are books for all ages, fiction and nonfiction. Please join us in this action for equality by donating one or more books. Thank you. Coming up next for Charlottesville Now is our annual meeting on May 26th at 7 p.m. Along with the business of electing new board members and hearing about Charlottesville Now happenings, there will be energizing and inspiring appearances from two game-changing feminists, Ellie Smeal of the Feminist Majority and Delegate Hala Ayala candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Bring your questions for Ellie. She has decades of activist history in her head and tells spellbinding stories. Ellie served 3 terms as president of National Now and now serves on its advisory board, as well as being president of the Feminist Majority and publisher of Miss Magazine. Hala is a Now member and founder and former president of the Prince William chapter of Now. A link to that meeting will also be in the chat. While we do not always have chapter programs over the summer, please keep your eyes out for emails about any casual meetup, book discussion, or candidate forum, which we may end up offering. We will also be joining National Now's all-virtual annual conference this year over 3 weekends in late July and early August. There will be great speakers and workshops, and it's all free. Learn more and register at the link, where else but in the chat. And just a reminder, Charlottesville Now is an all-volunteer organization that relies on donations of time, talent, and treasure from community members. All of our programs are free to everyone, but are not without cost to produce. Please consider supporting Charlottesville Now by becoming a member or making a donation. You can find links to join and to donate through PayPal or ActBlue in the chat tonight. Finally, you're invited to linger a bit after the program ends tonight if you wish to join us for some meet and greet time. We've really been missing the connection time from our in-person meetings and would love to chat with you. But now, finally, on to tonight's program. There will be time for Q&A after the whole panel presents, so please type your questions into the chat as they occur to you during the panelists' remarks. Our first speaker tonight will be Joey Conover. A Charlottesville native, Joey attended City of Charlottesville schools and now has daughters at Clark Elementary and Walker Upper Elementary schools. She currently serves as president of the Clark Parent-Teacher Organization. Joey is also a realtor with Nest Realty and manages a small construction and property management company, Latitude 38. As a busy entrepreneur, having 2 young children become virtual students overnight and stay at home for a year provided her with the opportunity to look for new ways of running the PTO and reaching out to families in need. And she is here to share those discoveries with us. So Joey, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. I don't really have an exact speech prepared, but just want to tell you a little bit about what the last year has been like in the communities where I work and serve. So as most of you remember, last year in March was pretty sudden, and the schools shut down very quickly. On Friday, we got an announcement about that there would be no school on Monday, which turned into much longer very quickly over the weekend. We were immediately thrown into a homeschool situation, of which not many people were prepared in the slightest. And many people had difficult work situations that took months to work out, and probably many are still dealing with. Candidly, we didn't do anything with the PTO for the rest of the year, pretty much. It was kind of a free-for-all as people just sort of managed their own lives. But we did start setting up pretty quickly virtual tools, which at this point, you know, the Now organization has done as well, and many people have, and that's been a learning curve that we've all gone through. But I still feel proud of the work we did on that front to quickly get some infrastructure set up to have communication tools. I really see the PTO as a communication organization largely, and maybe part of that is because that's what we've been doing the past year more than anything. Previously, the PTO often was serving as a vehicle for teacher appreciation, and often it's a place for the administration to connect with families, and it still is that. But right now, I've really focused on trying to be a vehicle for connecting families better to the school, getting the school messages out, getting community messages to family members and other caregivers, and also becoming more of a bridge to the division of CCS, the Charlottesville City Schools, and the changes that are being implemented across the division, of which there are a lot right now. Just to say quickly some of those, because I think that they have been not directly related to COVID, but I think that there are still things that families are dealing with a lot, which there's a school board meeting tonight, so they're fresh in my mind, which are, one is replacing the school resource officers, which were the police officers that were in schools. They've well, I don't know if the board has approved it exactly. I think they might be tonight. They've reallocated that funding towards these new positions, which are not exactly counselor positions, but they're someone to be a resource in the school for the students, but not police officers. So that's like a very new thing that's happening. They're copying a piloted program in Toronto, but there are not many models in the country for this. The other thing is they're really increasing some budget for social emotional learning in the district and adding counselors across the schools to really help families with mental health and students who are struggling with whatever they're dealing with, basically, and learning how to express it, and to have the the teachers and the staff and the administration and everybody have the language and tools to really help students communicate what they're going through, rather than expressing it through violence, for instance, or just acting out. And so I think that that's a really big growth opportunity in the schools to get away from that schools to prison pipeline and to encourage more integration of students than just suspending them when children are acting out. So that's just something I want to put out there, because I support some of those initiatives that the division is doing. There's also a lot of work going on with diversity, equity, inclusion on the district level. I think it's being pushed down to the schools through professional learning, but it's sort of hard to see that as a parent right now yet. The main thing we are trying to support as a PTO has been improving the library, like the history books in particular. And so that's something we're trying to give more funding to the librarian right now to support. But back to COVID, more related, we've really tried to help families. So I don't know if you all remember, but the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation launched a really big fund last year, right when COVID happened, that was raised a lot of money to support people who had immediate needs of rent or other cash needs. And that was really popular and successful. And there was a lot of demand for that. So the PTOs in the city of Charlottesville came together. There's 9 PTOs, 6 elementary schools, Walker, Buford, and CHS, and decided for the first time ever, I believe it's the first time, to do a joint fund of all the schools. And we raised almost $160,000. Which I think is really a testament to people wanting to support the schools and families. And it was also a really important effort because historically there's been a lot of economic difference across the division on certain schools getting a lot more resources, particularly related to PTOs. For instance, Venable has a lot of resources and Clark does not. Some of that has to do with the number of parents who have free time to fundraise and solicit funds. And so we historically have not raised that much money each year. So the joint fund was really a great opportunity to raise funds together and to distribute it back based on the percent of students in a school on free and reduced lunch. So Clark received about $17,500 of that fund, which was the second amount out of the elementary schools. Jackson Vi got a little bit more, and it kind of distributed down. So I think maybe Venable maybe got 8,000, for instance, just to compare. And so I just wanted to just tell you a little quickly before we go to the next speaker, just a few of the things we did with that. We donated about $12,500 to teachers for supplies, including books for the library, sensory tools, math manipulatives, sorting bowls, and pattern blocks for pre-K. There were a lot of specific teacher requests for things to keep students engaged while they were home virtually. Headphones, personal dry erase boards, and then also really encouraging once we came back to school, outdoor time, they installed slack lines, which is kind of a thing between trees, and soccer goals, and we've ordered some other play equipment and picnic tables to try to have more outdoor learning time. We also donated another $5,000 directly to families for winter clothing, shelf-stable food, partial rent payments, partial virtual learning center tuition, internet, and utility bills. And it was a really great opportunity to bring together a lot of people from the administration and the school social worker as well, and really try to reach out and support families with what was going on, which candidly is hard for me to see, especially during COVID. You just don't run into people at the school anymore to have much just casual conversation. And the PTO meetings became, in my opinion, a lot more accessible since they've been virtual. I think we've seen this across the board with public meetings, that the attendance has increased quite a bit. And we started doing sound old now, Facebook Live of our meetings, which sometimes would only see maybe like 3 people on there. But then later I would see 87 people had viewed the video, which was sort of shocking to me. But we never had anything like that at an actual PTO meeting. And maybe they only watched it for a few minutes. It's hard to tell, but I did get information from parents and teachers, which hadn't been very much involved either before, that they were getting information from those meetings, which I think was an important way to reach people that we weren't able to do before, and so, and I think social media and Facebook have been places where people can reshare information. I mean, this is not unique to our organization, obviously, but I think for women, just to wrap up, I don't know how much I've been blabbing on here. I think women have had to be home with the children more than other partners, probably a lot of grandmothers too, and other family members. But I think that the PTO, which is largely women, vastly women, getting the information and participating, has been able to connect more through virtual tools, which I think has been a really important change that I'm hoping affects people in the workplace as well, that they're able to participate and be more active in civic engagement, even if they have a job, and they work at the hospital at night or whatever it is that they do. So anyway, that's just a few thoughts. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Joey. I have to say, I've been telling my husband since this began, I've been so grateful that my children are older and didn't have to deal with this whole situation. And I'm just so impressed by what you've told us, how the PTO has stepped up and become so involved, and all the good things that are happening in the classroom that weren't before. It's too bad that it's taken this sort of situation to accomplish it. But thank you. Let's see here. I lost my notes. Our second speaker now is Janette Martin. Janette is originally from Kinston, North Carolina. She is retired from teaching in the Charlottesville City Schools. A lifetime member of the NAACP, Janette assumed the presidency of Albemarle Charlottesville NAACP in 2017. She is a member of Delta Sigma sorority, as well as the White Feather Leadership Educational and Historical Team and the President's Commission on the University in the Age of Segregation. Janette will talk about the disproportionate effect COVID has had on African American women. So I'll turn it over to you, Janette.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. Can you hear me? I don't think my speaker is, well, I've been told that you can barely hear me, but I'm hoping that you all can. Before I start, I had an opportunity to participate in a parental discussion about just listening to parents talk about how they had functioned during the pandemic. And this was a local group. And I was surprised to hear really positive attitudes. Most of the parents said that it caused them to have a reassessment of their family time, and they had made adjustments, and they were into a routine, and things were working out. So that was good to hear. I had expected to hear, well, not that, but it was good to hear that it was working out. Now I have done jotted down some notes that I'm going to read. I have been I read two studies. One was from author at University of Chicago and another from the University of Notre Dame. And I have sort of piecemeals here, but I hope you all can. I just chose a few things to bring to your attention. The economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic on women varies by race and ethnicity, according to this new analysis. The research was taken from studies done by the Universities of Chicago and Notre Dame, as I had said. The study cites that employment and wage earnings were hardest hit by Black women. This, of course, was a problem for those women who were responsible for household bills. The economic inequality is due to several factors. One major factor was several women were employed in service industry. Now, in service industry, this meant that wage earnings were more likely insufficient before the pandemic. Another concern, the fact that school systems fluctuated in ways of educating children because of health advisories that called for school officials to base their decisions on schools operating to ensure safety measures. Parents were faced with childcare, or in some cases, the fact that children were at home all day could be an extra expense on some households for meals and food. Children were at home all day in lieu of the hours that they were usually in the classroom. During a normal school day, children were in school, lunch, and when children were in school, lunch, and in some cases, breakfast meals were provided. Now that schools are reopening across the country, Black students have been less likely than white students to enroll in in-person learning, a trend attributed to factors including concerns about the disproportionate impact of the coronavirus on communities of color. Black women are concerned about the fact that schools may not be equipped to keep their children safe. The large number of students of color in urban areas have been allowed to reopen their classrooms But to quote several of these Black mothers in conversation, they felt that their children were safer at home. When your child enters the school system, you become an advocate, a detective, and a cheerleader. So things change. In some ways, remote learning makes that work. This study revealed information that some may not be aware that the pandemic, even though focused on the impact of Black women during the pandemic, authors of the study did admit that many people have been affected in some way economically and emotionally. The after effects of the coronavirus undoubtedly will be felt by many, not only Black women, but all those whose lives were affected by the change in many ways. Now, I'd like to go back to where I said here about Black mothers not feeling that their children were safe, they would be safer at home. It seems like in this study, several of the parents has spoken about children racial incidents, and children were not feeling comfortable in school, and nothing was done about it. And some parents were just glad, in a sense, to have home for that reason, even though they needed to be in school. So that was kind of depressing to hear, but it is what it is. And they will have to go back to those schools, and I don't know if changes will be being made or not. But at any rate, the study was interesting, and they all mentioned a little bit about Black women during that time were concerned about their health. That was another issue that came up that I didn't know, and that was interesting to hear. But it was so many little facets about Black women in these studies that I just grabbed a few of them in different categories, but it was interesting to know some of these things. But in other words, we can come to the conclusion that Black women were hardest hit during the pandemic. Should I ask anybody any questions from this, what I've said?
Janet, we're going to hold all the questions to the end so we can do all the questions and answers. But thank you very much. Yes, that's a discouraging story.
Yeah, it was. As I said, the study I'm not study, but the conversation I had with the local parents, that was very positive. But then when I read this, it was depressing, and quite unlike just hearing from the people that I had worked with. So, well, I guess everybody was affected in some way or another.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's encouraging to hear that the people you spoke to directly felt more positively about it.
That was the group that I had expected to hear. Depressing, but they were very positive, and especially when they said they had gotten a routine together, and the family, they was having more family time actually. And
Women get it together. Yeah.
Right. So that was positive.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We are doubly lucky tonight to have two representatives from Sin Barreras. Fanny Smedley, board president, is from Ecuador. She moved to the United States in 1988 and to Virginia in 2000. Since then, she has been active in justice efforts and outreach through the Catholic Church. She is a founding member of Creciendo Juntos. Sorry, my Spanish is not great. And Sin Barreras, and serves as the senior member of the Sin Barreras staff with the objective of bringing needed services to members of the Hispanic community and to reach out to those who are most vulnerable. So Fanny, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, I want to share some, and then Victoria can continue me after me if that's okay. Is in Sin Barreras is coming in Charlottesville 9 years ago, and we only the organization that helped to the Latino community, especially the immigrants. In Charlottesville and Albemarle, we don't have the place where the people, the Latino community, arrive to Charlottesville, go for help, for guide, for encourage, for support, was nothing. So that's why with the help with another professionals in the area, came in Sin Barreras. And I am the person that I believe in God. I bring my faith from my country, and always I looking for the church, because there is when we start hear the stories when we arrive for different countries. We speak the same language, Spanish, but we carry different stories. And that's why when Sin Barreras come alive, that was the make it, this is their home. This is the la casa, we say, because when they come in, we just listen and we understand the same language, and we not ask if you a document or undocumented person. So that is the trust for any community, so that we can be help and encourage and give it the tools and power to them to continue their life in this country. Our stories during the pandemic, it was very hard for us, the lesson. Sin Barreras, before the pandemic, we have different programs. Like I said, that we try to empower and educate to the community. So we have ESL classes, we have a GED classes, we have a citizenship classes, we have leadership classes. And then when the pandemic came in, everything is stopped. And was for us, that was that we don't know how help it to the community and continue with those programs. So that's when we start learn. For special for me, that was very hard how I use the technology. So imagine how other people from the community can use that technology. If some of them, they don't know how to use the computer, some of they don't know anything about send an email or contacted to the schools. So we are the support for the community. We are the bridge between the different organizations in Charlottesville and county to our community. And I can share with you many stories about special women, the surprise how hard work we are. Woman is not just to take care of the children, is to take care of the house, and make sure that everything is okay in the house. The woman is trying to keep everything okay. Inside us, we are broken heart, but we have to be the strong for guided to our kids and the husband or the partner, the boyfriend, whatever we has in our house. So say that we are hard work women, they coming from different countries. It surprised me that we receive a call. The women to work is so hard, 2 jobs. So it's so hard to hear that, because they left the kids at home because they have to support that, especially single women. They have to have 2 jobs because they have to pay rent, buy the food, and they have to be on every single day. So with the pandemic affected to everyone, especially the single women, because that women that was working so hard for take care of the kids, for giving the kids a better life in this country. So was for us, how are we helping them? A lady say, I work 60 hours a week and now I don't have nothing. I feel embarrassed. They ask for help because I was working. I supported my family. Now I call because I need to pay the rent. I don't have food. And also they say the Sin Barreras coming, advocate, coming, looking for help because we don't have to where we go for help, for asking help, especially with money so that we can support the community. But like I said, I believe in God, and God opened the big doors for the organization, and we have grants for different organizations, the city, the county, from California, for different groups. They help us raise money for giveaway, for giving in diapers. That is a big need in our community. So the students from the UVA, they help us raise all of the diapers. We have people help us with masks for kids, for adults, people they drop us alcohol for hands, everything, so that we can give it to the community. And there was, for us, at least I left a little bit about that. And all the time they say, I need to work. I don't want to ask you for this. I feel embarrassed. And that's what we say. If we can help, we help a little bit. And then you can go up when everything's go good. Our faith, like I say, today is a dark day. Tomorrow's gonna be a great day. And doesn't make us strong, the families together, and we help each other. Our community always we help each other. If many families in May start with the virus, a lot of the families coming one after one in the hospital, in the homes, and we receive calls. How will we do? How will we go? Who's gonna help me? I can't take care of my kids. So friends, they call us again, we help. How are we gonna do? What is it? The doctor. So all of that was hard, but the same token, they find the help in the neighborhood, friends, and relatives, and we was the support for them. We cry many times because we say, we can't help you. We don't have any more. So that's, I think, is stories that we can tell. The kids that we're very happy receive the masks for them. And we were very appreciated the person who make it for boys and girls, the masks. So they were so happy they can take it and enjoy them in that moment. So like I heard about the kids being in school, so the parents can go work. It's not a place where they can take the kids and they pay a less. For our community, it's expensive. They pay the daycare, the rent is very expensive for them if they not find the work. So with all of that, they say is, so I can give it to Victoria. She can share another stories, something that I didn't forget and can tell you, so she can continue and do it. What is I want to say is, we are women, we are strong, we believe in our faith, we keep it together, our house, and we hard worker. We worked very hard, and I remember a lady, she was infected with the COVID, and she take care of her family. And she say, I put a gloves, I put the mask, I put a delantal, as an apron, and I have to help her, because who's gonna help her? My husband, my kids. So that's for us. Listen, all these stories make us more human, make us more, that we have to be thankful for every single day. What do we have in our tables? Every time I sit in my house, I say, look, I have everything. Other families, they don't have it. So that's, for me, I share with that. And thank you for making this voice, like a woman. And we have a Mother's Day, we can celebrate for the COVID. At the church, we always coming together and make something to eat, and we share. And that's when we listen the stories, that's when we cry, that's when we laugh it. But but now we can. So I hope one day, like you say, that we have the hope, it's better day for tomorrow, so that we can enjoy the hugs, the love, the support each other when we see them with free time. So I leave it to Victoria, that she can share more about Sin Barreras. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you so much, Fanny. I know we were supposed to talk for like 12 minutes. So I don't know if I should hold off.
You're fine. You're fine. Let me just say a few words for you, Victoria.
For sure.
First of all, thank you, Fanny, so much for sharing your story. You're right. We depend on all the stories from all the women who have gone through this experience, and we appreciate the hard work of working together. Victoria, who's speaking next, McCullough is Client Service Coordinator, has been living in the US since 2009 and in Charlottesville, and with Sin Barreras since 2019. So take it away, Victoria.
Of course. So I think I made a really quick presentation, but I guess maybe in the interest of time, I can also just review the notes. Fanny covered a lot of most of what Sin Barreras does is really human interactions. And so what we do is really constantly hear people as they're going through whatever it is that they would like our support with, because we mostly just meet people where they're at. Throughout the pandemic, that has included sort of the health impact and the economic impact that the community we face has just been really overrepresented in terms of sort of the impact of coronavirus. So just a huge amount of like cases and hospitalizations at the start of this pandemic. So we used to get a lot of calls of people who were figuring out how they were going to isolate or how they were going to quarantine. We know that a lot of the community that we serve are overrepresented in industries that were some of the hardest hit at the start of coronaviruses. At the start of the pandemic, the economic crisis that kind of followed with that. Industries that already had sort of lower wages, less access to social support, healthcare, other sort of job-related benefits. So people who already kind of were not very well supported, losing their jobs, which was their main source of support. And sort of a lot of frontline jobs or hospitality jobs, cleaning services, construction, food service. And Sin Barreras was able to respond to that kind of in a lot of ways. I think Charlottesville, a lot of organizations around Charlottesville were very kind of quick to step up with us when we had to step up. And we've been pretty blessed to be able to work with organizations like the Latino Health Initiative to advance access to testing and to vaccine information that we've been able to put out. Another thing that we were able to kind of identify as a source of sort of a place that we could get that we could get into and help people out with was linguistically, putting out information. I think the community that we serve often kind of got information kind of like by the time it was translated, it was already too late for that information to be useful. So we've been able to meet people there with information and with access to services. As Fanny mentioned, we also want some pretty good grants to give food and rent assistance, and that has been a huge help to the community that we serve. As Fanny kind of already mentioned, the women that we normally are interfacing with can be, I mean, I think they tend to be younger. We get a lot of moms or single moms, and they're already navigating a precarious sort of situation. It's coming and sort of finding less resources in terms of information or in terms of just services. So they're working in jobs that maybe are more precarious and offer less protections. And they're much more likely to have exploitative, maybe like housing situations, or, you know, if you don't have a credit history, there's sort of things that you got to navigate there that can get dicey. All of which holds true for many American families, but kind of compiles with other factors that sometimes leave our community maybe a little bit more underserved or undersupported. When it comes to sort of the gendered way that these things come together, as I think we've heard already with both Janette and with Joy, things like navigating childcare in a time period where sort of you get like hybrid schooling situations between virtual and in person, that can get tough. Even stuff I was recently talking to a lady who could not, she needed to drive her kids to school, and that was costing her work. She needed to be available at times, just sort of drive her kid, pick them up and bring them home. And that was impeding her from picking up shifts at Chick-fil-A. And that's been something that's been hard on her. So we get a lot of things like that. Accessing social services, sort of with everything closing down and you don't have a computer, maybe figuring out what's open or when it's open or how you're going to get there, from sort of health to even things like the unemployment office, or maybe when you get there, they don't have support in Spanish. So all of these things kind of left the community that we serve a little bit untethered through this crisis. And so we've been doing our best to meet them there and hear them for sure and support them as best as we can. I think the kind of final thing that maybe is maybe the hardest one to like talk about, at least get information from on our community, and not a call that we get often. I think Fanny and I were discussing a little bit in the office, but it felt important to at least mention maybe sort of the greater risk of domestic violence situations. So what we've been doing is sort of our best to put information out on our social media about a lot of things in general, sort of in ways that are linguistically and culturally appropriate, but super specifically domestic violence is something that kind of already is broadly underreported, and then there's a whole bunch of factors that might like influence whether somebody within our Spanish-speaking or immigrant community might choose to not report. So we have done our best to put a lot of information out about that as the stay-at-home order changes, or as people are working more, working less, but sort of always when you have things like less work or less access to food or more time at home or something like that, those are always kind of like risk factors in this. So we've done our best to put information out there to support people in our community who might be more vulnerable for that. And that's kind of maybe the more negative aspects of the stories that we hear. It's been definitely a rough year, but it has been really good to be able to hear people. And I think we have gotten just all kinds of phone calls from people who just want to talk, to people who are processing kind of a lot of really tough stuff at the same time. So think that's probably yield my time if there's any questions, but thank you for having us here today.
Well, thank you very much for coming, Victoria. And yes, I'm glad you mentioned the domestic violence element, because I'm sure that is an issue throughout the country. So thanks both Fanny and Victoria. Our final speaker is Jennifer Bates. Jennifer is a licensed clinical social worker with over 10 years of clinical experience. She is the Director of Training and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Region 10 Community Services Board. Previously, Jennifer directed Region 10's PACT team, which provided community-based clinical services to individuals with severe mental illness, and worked with pregnant mothers in a residential substance use treatment program in North Carolina. She is a member of the Central Virginia Clinicians of Color Network and provided a training, Working While Black, to address the racial inequities faced by African American clinicians. And she has provided a variety of trainings and workshops regarding the intersection of race, gender, and mental health. Jennifer?
Yes, thank you for that. I have a PowerPoint, but I'm not sure that I am able to share it. So we're gonna try, and y'all can let me know if you can see it. Can you see it? Yes, okay, good. Okay, let's see. Can you still see it?
Yes.
Yes. Great, and can you see my notes? No notes, just PowerPoint. Good. All
Just
right.
the screen. Yep.
It's
Good job.
always good to check. I don't want you guys read my cards before I get there. All right. So women's mental health in the time of COVID. So wait, let me minimize you guys. All right. As Kathy so eloquently noted, my name is Jennifer Bates. I included this slide briefly to acknowledge a couple of things. We are all more than our careers, and yet we often define ourselves by them. I do too. So let me define myself briefly in a slightly different way. As Miss Angela notes here, life is about working hard and playing hard, living into it, and I aspire to do that. I like to say that I'm uniquely designed to bear witness by sitting with hurt, sorrow, bitterness, as well as joy, peace, and triumph. Sometimes all we need to do is lean into someone else's pain to help them get through it. I am courageous in the delightful definition that we see here. Every day I gain a little, lose a little, and then I try it again tomorrow. So now that you know a little bit more about me, one other thing you can probably guess is that I enjoy quotes. So get ready, you will see several of them during our time together. So I know this is hard, but I placed this statistic first front and center because it's a tremendous burden. Over 574,000 families have been impacted by a death related to COVID. That's a huge amount of pain. For many, funerals or memorial services were smaller or virtual. While grief and grieving is often a communal practice, during COVID, it's mostly been done in isolation, which can be an even heavier emotional burden. There's no one to hug, no one to pat your knee or rub your back or say it's going to be okay. And you can't do that for anyone else. Compounding this may be feelings of regret for not being present with a loved one when they passed away, guilt about not taking COVID-19 seriously, or a sense of impending doom regarding the effects of the pandemic. The process of grief is a process of adaptation. As Kubler-Ross and Kessler note, grief is a process in which you rebuild your life without the loved one in it. However, for 10 to 15% of people, the process of adapting is harder. Prolonged grief disorder can be defined as a form of grief that is persistent, pervasive, and interferes with activities of daily functioning. According to the Center for Complicated Grief at Columbia University, the rates of PGD are higher when the death is sudden, unexpected, or violent, when a young person dies, or when the griever has a history of mood or anxiety disorders, and women are at higher risk than men. There's an ongoing myth that homes are places of solitude and comfort, a place where you can be uniquely and completely you. I call it a myth because for many women, while their homes may include all of these elements, they may also be places of stress. Many women are experiencing increased rates of isolation and loneliness while being at home. During a recent study, Mixed Gender, researchers found that 36% of respondents in the survey reported feeling lonely frequently or almost all of the time, as compared to 25% who reported that feeling 2 months prior to the start of the pandemic. The data on these graphics are from a June 2020 report released by the CDC. To summarize what you're seeing, the symptoms of anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation went up in 2020 as compared to 2019 data. And those at greatest risk for adverse mental health conditions, including symptoms of anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, substance use and abuse, or trauma-related disorder, are young adults, members of the BIPOC community, essential workers, unpaid caregivers, and those with a pre-existing psychiatric condition. Intimate partner violence is defined by the CDC as abuse or aggression that occurs in a romantic relationship. An intimate partner refers to a current or former spouse or dating partner. Although the data is scarce, researchers have noted some alarming trends including increases in DV-related police calls following stay-at-home orders. For instance, in March of 2020, following a stay-at-home order in Portland, Oregon, the Police Bureau recorded a 22% increase in arrests related to domestic violence. In San Antonio, Texas, the police department noted they received an 18% increase in phone calls related to domestic violence in March of 2020 as compared to March of 2019. SAMHSA notes there is a concern that the numbers experiencing intimate partner violence will increase dramatically as a result of social distancing and quarantining during COVID-19. While calls to the police may have spiked, interestingly enough, research indicates that in some regions, calls to DV hotlines have decreased, likely due to survivors no longer having access to a safe space in which to call and receive support. Additionally, increased unemployment due to COVID has left women much more enmeshed and financially vulnerable to their abusers. This tenuous situation, compounded by closures of daycares and schools, in addition to the closure of shelters that's due to abiding to the pandemic restrictions, limited contact with teachers, concerned others, and counselors in person, who are sources of support and mandated reporters of abuse. And you have a recipe for a stressful, scary, and under-supported home life. During a training, I asked the icebreaker of colleagues, when you were 6, what did you want to be when you grow up? One colleague noted, I don't remember, but what I'm sure of is that when I was 6, the one thing I never imagined being was a stay-at-home mom while working from home full-time. And I think her statement captures the essence of overwhelm, disbelief, and strain that COVID has created for women who are currently in the workforce. And an assessment of women in the workplace, specifically focusing on women in corporate America, researchers found that women were disproportionately and negatively impacted by COVID, being furloughed, losing jobs due to company downsizing, supporting partners who may have lost jobs, worrying about family health were among the variables contributing to feelings of overwhelm and burnout. For those women who were able to remain in the workforce, the balance between work and home can feel overwhelming. As the graph on the right shows, mothers are feeling more exhausted, burned out, and pressured to work more. For those in leadership positions, the pressures are even more significant. Coming out of the boardroom and into other parts of the labor market, the trend remains true. Women are considering leaving the workforce in higher numbers and returning to the workforce in part-time capacities to accommodate ongoing home life pressures. Research suggests that one of the main drivers of the unemployment disparity between men and women during COVID is due to the presence of unpaid labor. Unpaid labor includes shopping, cooking, cleaning, childcare, elder care. Pre-COVID, it was estimated that women did an average of twice as much unpaid labor as men. As you can see on the graphic, 75% of women, as compared to 68% of men, have increased their rates of unpaid labor, with women adding more hours than men on average, especially for women with children under the age of 10. And I will highlight here that this is a dual career couple household graphic, so single women likely add even more responsibilities. I love each of these quotes for various reasons. They are all inspiring each of us to do better, to be better parents. But consider the implication of each of them. The emphasis is on family, which is amazing, wonderful, and good. But many of us also work. Striking a balance is hard. It's sometimes painful. Oftentimes, we feel that work is the glass ball and hope that everything else will bounce back. During COVID, financial stress exacerbated the feeling of guilt that many of us already felt. The imbalance that seemed just barely manageable was thrown off by pandemic life that included quarantine, school closures, daycare closures, limited familial and kinship supports, a fear of job loss, a fear of COVID, and on and on and on. I've often heard it described as relentless or torture, creating a feeling of weariness that's difficult to discuss due to the stigmatization of asking for help and social dismissal of the intensity of the responsibilities of being a caregiver. Having fun with your kids is not just fun and games. As these statistics show, women are overwhelmed. We carry an intense burden that can be difficult to manage. Region 10 has several services available to support the community through this. To name a few, emergency services is a 24/7 service to assist those via telephone in crisis. Adult outpatient services includes offers therapy and linkages to other services, including psychiatry. You can be assessed the same day. The Wellness Recovery Center in limited capacity is a short-term stabilization center for those needing support and respite for up to 14 days. The Child and Family Services team provides an array of support for children and families. For those struggling with addiction, we offer several services, including Project Link, a community-based service supporting pregnant and perinatal moms, the Women's Center, which is a residential treatment program, and the Intensive Outpatient Program, which is a therapeutic supportive group. We are all probably familiar with the term of coping strategies and self-care, easy to say and hard to do. I know that. I want to raise a few suggestions to your awareness for reflection and contemplation with absolutely zero pressure to do any of them. Trisha Hershey has a phenomenal perspective on napping as a practice of self-care. She states our bodies are a site of liberation and centers for practice around reclaiming time and space for rest daily as an act of rebellion against the capitalist structure and societal norms that require for us to give and give until depleted and then give some more. Adrienne Marie Brown discusses the liberative acts of discovering what gives you pleasure and joy. As women, there can be a socialization towards the body as being the site of pleasure for others, but possibly not for self. Ms. Brown challenges that social construct and encourages women to embrace that which is pleasurable. Peacekeeping can simply be defined as preserving the peace between two or more hostile states. Let that land for a moment. Preserving the peace between hostile states. Often we think of hostile states as governmental entities, but reflect for a moment on the conflictual and hostile states that you may have within yourself. Be present with yourself enough to notice and then identify practices of keeping the peace. Tara Brach uses the concept of RAIN to increase self-compassion and awareness. R stands for recognizing what is happening in a situation or moment. Allow that situation to be. Don't resist it. Investigate how you are feeling and where you are feeling it, asking yourself gently, where does it hurt? Then nurture that hurt with gentle tenderness. I like to encourage folks to engage in self-care that makes you feel good emotionally, physically, and mentally to the point of satisfaction. Overindulgence can create feelings of guilt, and underindulgence feels like disappointment. So I leave you now with some of my favorite quotes. I hope that they bring you the same joy, peace, and space for reflection that they have brought to me. Thank you so much for your time.
Sorry, I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Thank you very much, Virginia. I want to have the chance to reread all of those quotes that you included. I thought they were wonderful. So,
Do you want me to share that screen again? I can leave it up as we discuss if you'd like, or for a few minutes if you want.
okay. That would be, for just a couple minutes, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure, happy to.
Let me see. I just lost my document. Do a screenshot. Thank you. Oops. Yeah, here we go. Okay, let's see. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Like I said, those quotes were wonderful. And now we're going to open it up for the Q&A. Board member and Joey Conover's mom, Virginia Doherty. Yes, we have a mother-daughter combination tonight. Will be helping me by reading the questions that were submitted by the audience in the chat. So Virginia, I'll turn it over to you.
Can you unmute her?
Oh, Doug, oh, wait a minute, let me see. Oh dear.
Virginia, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay.
Ah, there you are. Sorry.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you for that. Was really helpful to have a positive thought message at the end. I appreciated that. First, I'm just going to throw a question out to everybody, all the speakers, and just see if anyone wants to comment. I'm curious as to whether you all thought that the federal government actions were really helped families, and particularly women. Of course, there was an eviction moratorium, and there was improved unemployment checks and so on, and actual other checks too. So did you all see that in the families you knew as being helpful?
I would say the cash payments directly, for sure. Anecdotally, I haven't heard as much about people who were facing eviction that prevented, but it could be the case.
Anyone else like to comment? I'm curious as to whether you all think that local government should be doing more. I know that recently the City Council or Board of Supervisors I don't forget which one, for example, is trying to come up with money to pay lawyers for people who are involved in eviction suits. And so there are things, even though local government doesn't have the big funds that federal government does, you know, they do have some funds. So are you all hearing anything about that? Do people complain about it, or? Joe?
I have not heard anything from local residents side. I will say, as a realtor professionally, I just got an email yesterday, I think today, sorry, I'm not remembering the headline, but I think it was federally designated that the eviction moratorium is going away, that it's not constitutional. So it was in defense of sort of mom and pop landlords that were considered to be suffering. that is probably going to start to roll out, and you will probably hear more stories as smaller landlords take action to evict people that they previously were not evicting. So I have not actually heard of anything in Charlottesville in particular, but that is something to be aware of that could happen. I mean, there's a huge housing crisis nationally, and I'm sure many of you have heard in Charlottesville. We've had a real problem with no low-income rental housing, and now the buy and sell market is skyrocketing and prices are 10% over what they were last year, and inventory is down 50% nationwide from what it was a year ago. And so there's just a lot of pressure on people who can't buy houses to rent houses, and that makes rentals more expensive. And basically, housing is a real issue.
The legal redress team of the NAACP had several persons to come to them with the problem about evictions, but once we got them steered on the right path, it was, well, they wanted to say it was discrimination because I guess they felt that we would help them if that was the case, but it wasn't. And we got them steered on the right path to get it taken care of.
I see. I think that the eviction moratorium, though, it's only been found unconstitutional by one judge. So immediately the Justice Department appealed that. So hopefully it won't go away so quickly. We'll just have to see. I wanted to ask a question, maybe first ask this to Jennifer. I'm curious as to whether you think that some of these mental health issues that people that have been exacerbated, depression, loneliness, substance abuse, are these things that are just going to go away when COVID, not go away, I know they're not going to go away because they're always here, but do you think they will lessen when COVID is no longer such an issue? Or are these, for example, they're saying that COVID itself can have long-term issues, that aren't even known right now. So I'm wondering if some of these other things are going to be things that the society is going to be dealing with much more.
I think so. There's a large concern in the mental health community about the wave of grief and all of the negative and maladaptive coping skills that make sense in COVID, when you have to quarantine and you're self-comforting and you're avoiding others, but then going out into the community, what that will look like, and all of the anxiety that's kind of been pent up and depression that's been pent up. I think that we're going to see the ill effects long-term in terms of figuring out how to help people cope with the coping strategies that they identified, and really start to disentangle all of the things that come from having a traumatic year. It's not just a traumatic year due to COVID, it's also a traumatic year due to racialized trauma. It's a traumatic year due to the political scene for the past, for 2020 and 2021. There are lots of aspects of trauma and traumatization that our body remembers that we really will have to process out, in addition to the complications of grief and loss and not being able to do that communally, to shame, hidden shames and embarrassments and fears that you might have, that's stored in the body, and so it really needs to be processed out therapeutically, really, for a lot of people in order to recover and feel better, I think.
I see we have some more questions about housing. For example, someone asks, how will people pay for their back rent once the moratoriums are lifted? Joey, are they still responsible for all the back rent?
I think so.
We can talk about a little bit the community for housing. Housing is a big issue for the Latino community, especially because a lot of the undocumented, and that is is people that start arrive, you hear in the news, they cross the border and they come into Charlottesville or the county. It's very difficult to find the house and moderate pay rent because it's too high, and also it's too many proofs they have to have for get those apartments. So with the federal money, we can get the rental relief program. The coming was not easy. Oh, here in the office, the people who try to help it to the community, they know about the technology, they know about the language, but was very difficult. One case take us almost 3 months, and that person never received a penny. So that is the very difficult with the system. With the local help, yes, we have a help, but it was not enough. Right now, like I said, the last year we were very fortunate that we have the support economically, but this year we don't have anything. So it's very hard now. It's concentrate more. I think everybody's talking more about the vaccine. It is important. I agree with that, but they forgot about the still the need housing, food, make it like a easy so they can people go receive the help. And now for we have a few cases. They went to court for helping me, Victoria, with the words, because they ask and they have to leave. So we find the help with the lawyer, the help of they go to the court. So that was a very difficult, and we don't know another cases can it come in soon because they not find a job, the rent is high, and also we don't have any more help for the community.
If I can also add, I think a lot of what Fanny says has been just consistent kind of from the start of the pandemic, is people with already kind of just like maybe like less like contracts that already just didn't provide a lot of protections for people who were renting, like month-to-month leases getting terminated, even things with like the moratorium on eviction didn't often include things for like it was eviction for non-payment, but not eviction for damages or things like that. So you get all of these like nuances and loopholes that somebody can ask somebody to show up in court for. And then in a lot of these kinds of cases, you don't really get like appointed an interpreter at court. So you have a family who maybe doesn't speak English as their first language getting asked to show up to court and not sort of understanding, maybe, or like having somebody explain to them sort of the processes of showing up to court or something like that. And families who don't get, who haven't gotten kind of any support federally for just a lot of different reasons, from education to immigration status, or I mean, not education, but like access to information, kind of stuff like that. So maybe you already don't have like a lot of resources, and the things that people kind of maybe, the things that like would make sense, except are not like the best way to respond to this, like just like moving out of the place where they're kicking you out of, and then like finding out that that follows you or whatever. Like those are a lot of things that really hit the community that we serve pretty hard, and then don't get sort of like built into the framework of how people are interpreting this crisis and then like choosing ways to respond to it. So I think to answer maybe like the first question that was about how the government response has been for different community members, it has really left kind of a lot of the intersections of like the most marginalized kind of really pretty underserved.
I would also say for non-immigrants, I think Virginia ranks last in processing for unemployment claims right now. And I know of at least one person, and I'm sure there are more, people who are just not very comfortable dealing with applications like that and going through bureaucracy, and just didn't, like people I know who do kind of in-home daycare and didn't really have a job exactly, were somewhat self-employed, and I'm sure this could be true for some house cleaners and stuff too, who didn't realize that they could file for unemployment, and just didn't, and probably could have gotten some cash assistance, but.
Kabi has also pointed out in the chat that, you know, if some of this will make some people homeless, which is obviously going to be a lifelong trauma. There's a good question here, and we might end on this question, y'all. Charlotte says, do the panelists have any actions they would recommend to individuals to take to support local women who are overwhelmed by this COVID life? Do you have any suggestions that individuals could take to help women? Jennifer?
One thing that I would say is to definitely reach out to women, especially moms that you know, to see if there's anything that you can do. I think that, again, the stigma of asking for help and the fear of rejection and kind of not knowing that you're underwater until you're so far upside down that you don't know left from right, is a real struggle for many women. Statistics bear it out. Nationwide statistics and individual experiences bear out the fact that many mothers are just overwhelmed and almost can't find the time to ask for help. I've had women that, you know, aren't even able to identify a time that they can shower, or, oh my God, I didn't eat lunch for the entire week. I just kind of ate a ham and cheese sandwich that, you know, like, or ate, you know, I tend to eat, like, steal some nuggets from my kids sometimes. So, you know, like reaching out to mothers, especially single moms, you know, even a nice kind of, you know, could we meet in the park and you just sit on the bench and I'll, you know, socially distance watch the kids, just to give you a chance for time and space, just to acknowledge that taking a nap, eating a piece of chocolate, you know, watching a favorite show you aren't binge watching, but you're taking self-care, for any woman at this time, is a way of taking care of the community of women as a whole.
In a very practical way, maybe Fanny, you want to talk to it, but I had talked to Sin Barreras about something they would like, and they suggested that they're always in need of diapers. So was that what you were going to bring up, Fanny? If you want to go ahead and speak to that.
Yeah, it would be nice, like I say, they help us collect the diapers and wipers for size 3 up, because the babies they have. And also the suggestions, like I say, how they help a woman to woman is like sometimes when you want to like adopt for summer holiday or something, bring to their home, or just like, you know, a gift for a woman, because we always think of for our kids, so, you know, but the woman always is. Sometimes it's like I said, we love to have Women's Day, so they can have like a massage, they can have like a pedicure, they can have a manicure, something that be just for women, because that's, you know, it is nice to have that for at least for 1 hour. We forgot about what is going on in our homes. So I think that's to be a great way to help a woman to woman. And I like it, Jennifer say, sometimes we just need to be listened, and like say, we just be a companion for that person.
Thank you, Fanny. And Janette, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was going to say that sometimes we've gotten, well, usually the husband comes with them but they want to say that it's discrimination or something like that sort, which is not. And once you talk to them and, you know, suggestion agency or some other resource that they might use, you usually get, you know, a better, they get a leave feeling that somebody's listening to them. But most of, you know, you just listen to people, not turn them off, because actually they just don't know what to do. They really don't, a lot of them. They simply don't know. But one thing, when this started, I mean, how many people even knew what a pandemic was? And it wasn't explained to the nation in terms of what might happen, what could happen, anything. It just, as if everybody can remember, it started with a bunch of untruths, and it just went from one thing to another, and as a result, it got out of whack. That's why it's so difficult now bringing it in, and a lot of people didn't understand what even happened to them. It's just a sad situation, which I think I agree with Jennifer. The after effects will be around for some people probably forever.
Thank you. So I just want to say, before I turn it back over to Kathy, there are ways you can pressure the government. Some of you do that all the time. So if you write letters to the government, or you know somebody in the government, talk to them about this stuff. And as just for the people that are here, I do appreciate the suggestions for reaching out to people personally. Thank you very much. And Kathy, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thanks so much. First, I just want to say thank you to all the enlightening speakers who have been so generous with their time and areas of expertise, areas that it's sometimes hard to see into. So this was particularly wonderful. Secondly, I thank you to all the attendees who Zoomed in with us tonight. And I encourage, as Virginia said, to act politically to try and get changes made through the system, beyond doing what we can individually, reaching out to other women. Thanks to Virginia for the help with the Q&A, Doug Miller for his tech skills, and Charlotte Gibson, our president, who answered all of my questions on how to host this Zoom, and will take over the casual chat after the meeting. We always recommend action members can take, so we refer you to the book drive for the library, the diapers for Sin Barreras, and as Jennifer said, the reaching out on a personal basis. Remember to save the chat so you have all the links we have referred you to, and watch it on YouTube if you've missed anything. Thank you again so much, everybody.